Welcome to a world with limitless possibilities. A world where pain and suffering are matched only by the sounds of those who endure it. Welcome to your nightmare.
Welcome to your nightmare.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Nightmare. It is that time of the year where fairs come to town to grace us with their presence. And tonight we're stepping past the rusted gates of Whispering Pines Funland, a place where the neon burned out decades ago, but the machinery still knows how to turn. Tonight we're taking a journey with Marcus as he looks for his lost brother, Leo, and the horrors he has to face along the way. Tonight's story is called Whispering Pines Funland. The rain didn't wash Whispering Pines Funland clean. It just made the grime slick. Marcus stood at the rusted turnstile, shivering under a late August sky, the color of a fresh bruise. The air smelled of pond water, wet copper, and something sickeningly sweet, like sugar left to rot in a cellar. He hadn't come for a ghost story. He came for Leo. 6 months ago, his younger brother walked past these gates on a dare, live streaming his trespass to a dozen bored teenagers. The feed cut out 40 minutes in, right after he found the Central Plaza. The police found Leo's phone on a bench near the carousel. They didn't find Leo. The official report called it a runaway case, but Marcus knew his brother. Leo left his asthma inhaler on his nightstand. He didn't run. He was collected. Marcus reached into his heavy canvas jacket, feeling the hard square of Leo's last gift, a small silver pocket watch that ran 3 minutes slow. To his left, the ticket booth's dispenser spat out a single stub. It fluttered to the mud in Marcus's boots. He picked it up. The ink was dry, fresh, and bleeding into the pulp. Admits one. Lost property must be reclaimed. A low frequency vibrated through the rubber soles of his boots, a hum that rattled his teeth. Down the midway, the speakers burst to life. It wasn't a cheerful carnival march. It was a slowing, warped recording of a nursery lullaby. The exact one their mother used to hum when Leo had night terrors. Marcus stepped through the gate. The midway stretched out like a dead spine. On either side, the game booths squatted in the dark. Ring toss, balloon dart, the memory well. He stopped in front of the knock 'em down booth. The wooden bottles weren't painted white. They were carved from heavy, yellowed bone. A ball, stitched from cracked gray leather, rolled out from the shadows behind the counter, bumping gently against Marcus's boot. "Leo," Marcus whispered, his voice thin against the ambient groan of the park.
He didn't hit the target.
Voice rustled from the dark of the booth. It didn't sound like a monster. It sounded like an old carnival barker who had spent 40 years screaming over the roar of a crowd, hoarse, dry, and terrifyingly casual.
He tried to keep what he lost. That's not how the game works.
Marcus raised his flashlight. The beam hit a man standing behind the counter. His face was a mosaic of sewn-together leather masks, the thick thread biting deep into gray flesh. He wore a faded burgundy ringmaster's coat, stained black at the cuffs. "What did you do with him?" Marcus demanded, his throat tightening. The ringmaster leaned over the counter, his hands, long, spindly, with nails yellowed like old piano keys, resting on the edge.
We don't take anything that isn't offered. Your brother traded his breath to buy more time on the wheel. What are you playing with?
Before Marcus could pull back, the ringmaster's hands shot out with blinding speed, snatching the flashlight from his grip. Pitch black. The wind died completely. The lullaby cut out. The sound came from inches in front of Marcus's face. He reached out into the dark, his knuckles brushing against coarse wool and cold, damp skin.
He's at the top,
the ringmaster whispered, his breath smelling of ozone and old dust.
He's been waiting for his turn to come down, but the wheel requires weight to turn.
Snap. A violent white light erupted above. A flare ignited atop the giant Ferris wheel at the end of the midway, bathing the rotten park in a harsh chemical glare. The wheel began to move. It didn't glide, it shrieks. Metal grinding on ungreased metal, throwing sparks 30 feet into the wet air. The painted carriages swung wildly as they rose. In the very top car, silhouetted against the blinding white flare, sat a small, thin figure. His hands were gripped tightly around the safety bar.
Leo!
Marcus screamed, sprinting down the midway. He passed the carousel, but the carved horses weren't moving. They were turning their heads on their poles to watch him pass, their glass eyes reflecting the sputtering flare light. He tripped over a thick black cable, snaked across the gravel, slamming shoulder first into the mud. But he forced himself back up. He passed the carousel. He reached the base of the Ferris wheel. The control box was blown open, its copper wires hanging out like spilled guts. The carriage at the top swayed, creeping slowly down as the opposite side rose. As it reached eye level, the machinery jammed with a deafening thud that shook the ground. The carriage hung 10 feet above the loading ramp.
Leo!
Marcus gasped, scrambling onto the thick metal platform. The small figure in the car turned. It wore Leo's red windbreaker. It had Leo's messy dark hair. But when the flare light hit the face, Marcus saw the porcelain finish, cracked along the jawline, smooth and dead where the mouth should be. A thick key was jammed into the back of its neck, slowly turning with a mechanical clink, clink, clink. The thing that looked like his brother opened its hands. Lying in its palm was a single silver watch face, shattered and filled with damp sand.
You came late.
A voice spoke from inside the doll's wooden chest. It wasn't Leo's voice. It was Marcus's own voice, recorded and played back at half speed.
You always come late.
The iron framing above groans as a massive shadow dropped from the top axle of the wheel. It landed on the platform, 3 feet away with a wet, heavy thud. It didn't have a face, just an enormous, gaping speaker horn stitched into the pale, leathered flesh where its chest should be. The patchwork coat it wore was made from dozens of small clothing samples. Faded denim, windbreaker nylon, child-sized sweaters. It reached up, its long jointed fingers wrapping around the rim of the carriage.
The park doesn't haunt the dead.
The voice echoed from the speaker in its chest, vibrating in Marcus's own ribs.
The park keeps what you couldn't save.
The creature lunged forward, its wooden fingers snatching from Marcus's throat. Marcus didn't run. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the silver watch, and rammed it violently into the center of the creature's speaker horn.
Ha!
A sound like tearing canvas ripped through the air. The entity recoiled, uttering a high-pitched, shifted shriek as the brass gears of the watch tangled in its internal mechanism. The illusion shattered. The flare went out. The carousel's eyes lost their glint, and the iron wheel stood frozen under the gray light. The red windbreaker dropped from the carriage, empty, fluttering down into the mud at Marcus's feet. Marcus dropped to his knees, clutching the damp fabric to his chest. The lullaby had stopped. The park was just cold wood, rusted iron, and falling rain again. He pulled the coat close, breathing in the faint scent of laundry detergent and pine. And then, from inside the dark pocket of his brother's empty jacket, a small, cold hand reached out and tightened around Marcus's wrist. That is all for this episode of Nightmare. As always, I do appreciate everyone joining me this evening for these tales. If you have any story suggestions, please reach out to me at nightmarepod@gmail.com or simply reach out to me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, or even on Spotify. Don't forget to like and follow us on social media. And please continue rating and reviewing my show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And until next time, sleep well.